Liberate IT is an Oracle NetSuite solution provider that has been servicing Australian and New Zealand companies since 2011.
Well, hello and good day, everyone. Welcome to the latest of our webinar series from Liberate IT. Today, we're going to go through all things advanced PDFs. Really looking forward to that. As always, I am your host, Andrew Liniger, Relationship Manager for Liberate IT. Do reach out if you've got any questions about NetSuite or anything else that you might need assistance with, here to help. Today, we are going to, I'll briefly touch on some updates from us as a team, NetSuite themselves, and then we'll get on with Josh, who's going to present advanced PDFs for us, and then back to me to wrap up. As always, we will be recording today's session. It will be available on our website and on YouTube about a week after today, so keep an eye out for that if there's anything that you missed and you'd like to recap. We will be taking questions as we go today. Please, as always, use the Q&A function rather than the chat. I'll be moderating the chat so that Josh doesn't have to worry about that today, and I'll be interrupting him as we go. Okay, so some updates on our end. As mentioned, last webinar, all of our user events across Australia and New Zealand are all complete. So thank you for everyone who attended those. If you missed those and you were interested in what was in the latest release, come and reach out to me. I can share the slide deck with you and also a bit about the roadmap of what NetSuite are releasing in the near future as well. For Liberate IT, we're going to have a brief shutdown this year, starting at end of play Friday, 23 December, and the whole team will be back on deck Monday, the 9th of January. We'll be monitoring the support desk during that time. Josh will have the pleasure of doing that. Not sure how he's going to go Christmas Day, but we'll see. Hopefully you're not working on Christmas Day. Some upcoming webinars. Our last one for the year will be Suite Commerce. Stephen from NetSuite will be taking us through that solution. A bit of a milestone on our end, Leanne Kane, who heads up our professional services team. She reached 25 years as a chartered accountant. It has been said she may have started at the age of 10. All right, so congrats to her. Some updates from NetSuite, nothing really to report since last fortnight's webinar. Obviously, the 22.2 release is all completed, all done and dusted. So we are all good to go across the world with 22.2. NetSuite do have a few new modules available for sale. I'll touch on those. My account, so for your customers to log in and pay your invoices and check out their statements and all that sort of thing. 10-day activation process to get that up and running for you. So it's a nice customer portal with a modern user interface for your end customers to have a chat with me if that's something you might be interested in. NetSuite's Suite Commerce, which is a templated approach for a new website using various templates such as the Summit and Bridge one that I've got on screen at the moment. 30-day activation there for the new website, if that's something that you're interested in. Different templates searching suitable for different business types. So do get in touch with me if that's something that you might be interested in, or even if you're happy with your existing website, but you need to launch a B2B portal for your customers to purchase things from you that is completely integrated tightly with NetSuite. There's no integration layer to worry about. It is all built on the platform. Suite Commerce is a little bit different to Suite Commerce Advanced, which has been around in the market now for quite a number of years. Essentially, at the end of the day, Suite Commerce updates twice a year seamlessly, just like your NetSuite solution. Suite Commerce Advanced is a manual process there. And the reason for that is that you can't get into the back end, into the source code and have a wriggle around in there. So some pluses and minuses of both, but be keen to explore either or both with you if that's suitable for you. Lastly, we've got Smart Count. Smart Count is a stock take tool so that your team can just use their mobile device to do a stock take in the business. Some benefits of that is you don't need to stop the business while that's happening. It will track any purchases or transfer orders that take place while the team's doing a stock take. Some things that we've discovered with that is you do need to be on a Suite Success account or have one world already enabled on the account. But apart from that, some good feedback on that little app. It's a pretty good one. Don't need to purchase WMS to get access to that. Okay, that's just about it from me. As always, I like to talk about the webinars that NetSuite themselves do. They're more training sessions on NetSuite proper. Obviously, a lot of focus around finance and around reporting. So you can see the list there. So if you've got a company-wide Learning Cloud support pass, I would really encourage you to get onto those. These are just those that are available in our region. There's others available in other regions across the world as well. So do jump on there and make sure that you're taking advantage of that, or your new team members are taking advantage of that too. So that's it for me. I am now going to hand over to our support team leader, Josh Gordon, who's going to take us through all things advanced PDFs. Josh, hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Andrew. Hey, look, lots of exciting things there. I'm really excited for Smart Count too. That's yeah, really exciting, that little module there. So if you haven't looked into that, let me just encourage you to do so. I think it's going to sort of revolutionize the way that NetSuite does stock taking. But that's not what we're here for today. Today we are here to talk about NetSuite's advanced PDF forms. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So today we're going to be looking at all sorts of bits and pieces. I don't, disclaimer up front, I don't expect that at the end of the session, you're going to be able to sit there and design an advanced PDF from scratch and do all sorts of fun bits and pieces. That's not going to be possible in the 40 minutes that we've got together. But what I am hoping to do is just sort of spark your imagination with what's possible with advanced PDFs and take out some of the fear of the unknown of what we're actually going to be looking at. So by the end of today, hopefully you will feel comfortable enough to sort of move forward, to start playing around with PDFs in a sandbox environment, first of all, of course. And if you don't have a sandbox, reach out to Andrew and we'll set you up with one. Otherwise, yeah, let's have a look. It's my belief that advanced PDFs are really key to helping take your business to the next level of both efficiency and professionalism, as opposed to what we call the standard PDF forms that are sort of the out-of-the-box solution, but they look exactly like that. They look like an out-of-the-box solution. So what are we actually going to be looking at today? Well, very quickly to start with, we're going to be looking at standard versus advanced PDFs. You know, what's the difference? What's the pros and cons? We're going to be looking at what's possible when we switch to advanced PDFs. Again, we're only going to touch the tip of the iceberg here, but hopefully it will spark your imagination and you will end up going down a rabbit hole of yeah, exciting possibilities. We're then going to switch to a real live environment and look at turning on advanced PDFs in your NetSuite environment, and then also do a bit of a walkthrough. That's going to take up most of our time this morning, where we're actually going to start modifying an invoice template in the advanced PDF designer, looking at some of the code and how that all works. So jumping right into it, here we go, the standard PDFs. Before we even talk about advanced PDFs, I think it's key to look at what is the standard PDFs and why should we even switch? What are the differences? What's the advantage? So the first thing before we go talking about advanced PDFs is standard PDFs are considered a legacy tool by NetSuite, which as soon as NetSuite starts using that, obviously we get a little bit apprehensive that come a future release, it will just get switched off altogether. But we can take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. NetSuite have been saying this for about 4 years now, and they haven't switched it off yet. But we are noticing that with some of the new releases, such as like the fulfillment order request, there is limited functionality or a restriction with standard PDFs. So they're sort of forcing you to shift on to advanced PDFs. So what we're starting to do is encourage people that, hey, if you're thinking about the jump from standard to advanced, let's consider that seriously, because it's far better to do it in your own time, when you can come up with a change management plan internally, rather than sitting there going, uh-oh, this is going to be turned off and we're going to sort of be pushed into a decision. So let's put that to one side though and just look at the differences. Now, or the similarities in this first instance. Both standard and advanced PDFs have what we call a WYSIWYG editor, which, if you're not familiar with that term, it literally stands for what you see is what you get. So if you think about like a Word type document where you can just drag and drop things in with your mouse, that's the sort of editor we're talking about here. But unfortunately, with standard PDFs, your visual customization is really limited, and the fields that you can access are also quite limited. So it is a very restrictive tool. Again, when you first start out, that may work for you, but the advantage of advanced PDFs is everything is virtually fully customizable. We're talking the layout, we're talking the data that you can pull from linked tables, you can utilize formulas within the form itself, and you can even do conditional formatting, and that is one of the real key strengths of advanced PDFs. Unfortunately, the negative side is that it does require at least a basic familiarity with HTML coding and what we call free marker. But again, today, that's what we're hoping to look at, to remove some of that fear and unknown around that, so that you can start to explore this, because it's a really exciting world when you get down into it. So when should you consider to switch to an advanced PDF if you're currently on standards? That's a question that I get asked a fair bit. The reality is there's sort of four main areas where the limitations of standard you're going to have to switch over. The first is if you've got a specific layout requirement that standard PDFs aren't dealing with, you're going to have to switch. If you want to incorporate conditional, if-then logic, if you think of like an Excel case when formula, you can use them in saved searches within NetSuite. You can use those in advanced PDFs, but only in advanced, not in standard. If you want to incorporate calculated values within your form itself as well, you can do that in an advanced PDF form, not in standard. There is a way around this, obviously, if you create a custom a custom field within the record itself, but advanced PDFs means you don't have to create that extra field. It's not going to clog your form up. It's really neat, and you can get and do some fantastic formulas there as well. So yeah, and if you want multi-page PDF forms, say you've got terms and conditions that you want to attach to an invoice or a sales order confirmation, you can only do that in an advanced PDF. And we're going to look at some examples here. Now, this is an advanced PDF that is fairly basic, right? It just gives you a bit of an idea. You can see we've thrown some neat color in it. There's nothing too flash. But what we can do is start looking at things like putting watermarks in the background, right? Now, that's something not available in standard PDFs. You're not going to use this tool every time. But in this example, we've got an order confirmation printed from a sales order, and the client says, hey, I want to put something to say, this is not an invoice, this is just a confirmation document. You can do that. So that's something that not a lot of people are aware of, which is why I wanted to point it out to you today. We've also got things like barcoding. You can chuck barcodes on advanced PDFs. So you can put them on picking and packing slips. You can put it on pallet cards like we've got here. I've made a pallet card for a manufacturing environment. Those of you that utilize like RF Smart to do internal transfers or receipting, things like that. I suffer from what I call sausage finger syndrome, which is where you're trying to hit the tiny little numbers and things on the keypad and you keep getting it wrong. So switching to a barcoded form is really handy. It improves your accuracy and your production time. And again, if a field is accessible to a form, you can barcode it. So again, the world is your oyster. Really start thinking about how you can possibly exploit that to the best of your ability. And your warehouse team will absolutely love it, I guarantee. And then, as I've mentioned, one of the most exciting features of advanced PDFs is its conditional formatting. So we've got an example here of a a form, and what you'll notice is that we have this internal consulting line with a $0 charge. Now you can do some real simple conditional formatting and say, if a line is got a $0 charge, actually make it disappear, like what we've got here. And that's not going to possibly completely change the world, but it does just help you shift from looking like something out of the box to something that is sort of a bit more personalized and a bit more professional. And if that is at the easy end of conditional formatting, we can go to the opposite extreme where we can start collating things in a specific order with subtotals on item fulfillments, on sales orders, on invoices. Here's an example of a sales order. And what you'll notice as we look down here is there's conditional formatting to say, first of all, let's group all our Apple products and then have a little subtotal. Then we're going to group all our Dell products with a little subtotal, then any services, and then the standard sort of subtotal total box like what you'd have. Now, you cannot even attempt to do this within standard PDFs, but you can do it within advanced PDFs. And that's some of the really cool stuff once you start getting into that can help take you to a very unique feel with your forms externally and internally. And look, that is the presentation side of things. I'm now just going to switch over to a live demo environment, if you bear with me 2 moments, and we're going to start looking at actually how we do some of this on a practical level. So just bear with me while I bring up my notes here. Sorry, guys. The joys of technology, right? It all works perfectly until you start going live. What we want to do first, though, is we want to come and have a look at exactly what... oh, now we've lost you altogether.
We just see a handsome face, Josh.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Let's
see what we can do. We're back and running here. All right, brilliant. So what we're going to do first is look at how do you even turn on advanced PDFs. Now, the good news is that most of you, whether you utilize it or not, will probably already have this turned on in the background. But one way that you can check is if you come through here to the setup screen and you come company and enable features, it's going to take us through to the Suite Cloud subtab. And that's where we're going to turn things on. So here we go at the end, right at the end, Suite Cloud. You can see advanced PDF HTML templates. If that is ticked, you've already got advanced PDFs set up in the background. You just need to switch to start using them. And again, 95% of you will probably already have that on, even if you're not utilizing it. So you can check that out yourself in your own account if you've got an administrator access and permission to see the Enable Features tab. The next thing we're going to do is actually look at, well, how do we start customizing one? So this is hidden under customization, forms, advanced PDF HTML templates. You know, it's really sort of hidden away there in a non-obvious place. And what we're going to see, as mentioned, this is one of our demo accounts, so we've got a lot of forms hiding in here. But for today's purposes, we're going to come down and look at an invoice template. Now, what you will notice is there's going to be 2 different types of standard PDF forms here. You're going to have some templates, and then you're going to have ones you've worked on. So you'll see here we've got customize and edit. So edit means it's one that we've been doing work on. Customize is a standard template. Very similar for those of you that are familiar with sort of the employee roles, right? NetSuite will have a set bunch of templates there that you can use and customize and set up to your own requirements. Same thing here with the advanced PDFs. And when we click on that, we get taken right through to our WYSIWYG editor, which it never gets boring saying that. And you can see here, there's a whole bunch of information. It looks and feels similar to sort of a Word document with a table set up in it. But before we even start looking at the form itself, what we need to do is save ourselves a copy. So to do that, we're going to come and click on this template setup. Okay, we can put in a title here. Now, for today, we're going to call it Webinar Invoice Template Demo. Again, we can put in a description, text invoice. You can pick your orientation, your letter size, and your margins, just like you're sort of, again, similar to a Word document. And I guess that's the best way to describe this sort of editor, is I've tried to give it that feel that we'll all be relatively familiar with. So before we go on, we're actually going to save this. And unfortunately, it's going to kick us back to the list of all our advanced PDF forms. So we're now going to come through and find it to edit it now that we've saved it. So here you'll see invoice. We're looking for webinar invoice template demo. So that is us. And now what you'll find, we've got this drop down here where we can do save and edit, which the first thing before we go on is I want to talk about saving and editing and the preview functionality. Whenever you are editing a PDF template, you want to be saving or previewing very regularly. The worst thing you want to do is go and make a whole bunch of changes, adding things in, and then when you go to save or preview, what happens is it spits up an error for your code, because then you're going to have to figure out exactly where the error is. Much easier to do it in small little pieces. Always using the save and edit function, though, is going to keep us within the screen. If we just click save, it's always going to boot us back to that main menu. So again, before we go looking at modifying, we're just going to see what we've got here. Again, this is a fairly standard feel. It feels very similar to sort of your standard PDF as opposed to an advanced one. What we can see, we've got a logo field, so company name and address. We've got some invoice details at a header level. We've got who it's being billed to, some terms, and then we've got the main sort of table with our items, descriptions. We can see that there's bolding and sort of some shading going on and a page count. So hopefully when we hit this preview button, what happens is NetSuite fills in the form with some generic text. And the first thing that we notice is, unfortunately, what we saw is not what we're getting in this instance. And that is something that I really want to look at today is, although Advanced PDFs does have this WYSIWYG editor, it's not going to solve all your problems. When you're utilizing this, you really do need to look at the source code. And I know that's a scary concept when you're first starting out, but or else you can end up with funny things going on like this to do with the sizing, and then it's smushing over all our details here. Our page numbers in the footer look great. The table looks great, but at this stage, this form as it is not really usable. So we're going to explore today how we can fix this header, and we're going to add in some customization into our footer. And in that process, hopefully give you a whole bunch of tools so that you can, like I say, start exploring down this journey of advanced PDFs. So if we close that now and come back here, what you'll notice at the top is we've got this lovely little menu bar and a style tab. So looking at each of these and what they do, the first is a field table. Now this feels similar to those of you that have used the NetSuite Analytics or the report builder, very sort of similar. You can search for various details like email, and it gives you here the internal ID that you can add in. You can see in blue the table where it's pulling the data. So that's something that you want to be familiar with itself before you start looking at advanced PDFs, is how NetSuite organizes its the fields within its various tables. So here you can see we've got records or fields available to us within the record itself, which in this instance is an invoice. So here's an invoice that I've pre-prepared earlier. So any fields that are shown on this particular record, this contact phone number, the items here, these sit within the record table. Company information table, that's actually sitting within your setup company information. So that allows us to put things like our company name, potential logos, that kind of thing. User, we can put things from the user that is related to the record. So it's a really great sort of way to start exploring what's possible. Again, depending on what record you are looking at, some of this will change. Yeah, what we're looking at today, the fields may be a little bit different if we were looking at a purchase order than, say, an invoice. We've then got some fairly standard sort of web or Excel type buttons here. We've got add a text box, add a picture, add a table, page number of total page, similar to what we've got down here. You can see page number of page count. We've got add a page break, and then we've got add a horizontal line. So for those of you here, see how we're between our main body table and the subtotal, we've got a horizontal line. That's just by clicking on this button. The N2 tab buttons is turn header on off and turn footer on off. I just recommend ignoring those. You're probably going to want a header and a footer on your documents. So let's have a quick look at what we can do here today before we even start moving through. What we're going to do is do a bit of customization here in the footer. And as mentioned, this is made to feel sort of like a table within a Word document. So what you'll find is right-clicking is going to bring you up, insert cell before, delete cell, split, table properties, all those kind of fairly standard, familiar sort of functions. What we've decided is the CFO has come and seen us and said, look, we're all about going green these days. We want to put in a thank you for considering the environment before printing this email in our footer. So to do that, we're going to come in, right click. If we go to row, insert row before, you will see that we've added now a row above our page count. Now at this stage, we've decided we want to center this, but you can see we've got two different cells. So how can we get around this? We're going to merge them, just like you would in a standard sort of Excel document table. So you can see right click, cell, merge cells, and that has now become one big cell, and we can just start typing. Thank you for considering the environment, etc., etc. Now that's not in the center. The way to do that is to come up and click on our styles tab, and you'll see again a very familiar feeling sort of look on things. We've got our center. We could right align. For those of you seeing how it's switching around here, we're going to go center. We're going to make it italics just for a bit of a feel. Now, the other thing that we want to do is we want to put in a company email address for people to contact us if they've got any queries. And we want to make it look a little bit, custom and cool. We're going to add in a little email picture down here. Now, again, I've pre-prepared this earlier by putting a file in our NetSuite environments file cabinet of this lovely little email logo. What we want to do is you can utilize any picture that you've uploaded to your file cabinet just by grabbing this URL that's attached to it. So we're just going to copy that here, come back to our PDF template, and click on the Add Picture button. Right, we're going to add it into this cell, so it's already where we want it. And when we click that, you see it's asking for the URL here. So we're going to paste that. When we come tab out of that, you'll see that it has put in the picture and how it currently will relate to text, and it's absolutely huge. So we can come and customize here the width and the height. At the moment, the proportions are locked, which is great. So if we just change that, we can now see it's going to be sitting roughly about the same size as the text. We could choose to put a border with some spacing around it or alignment. We're going to hard align it left. We're not going to look at the advanced tools today. Again, we're just touching sort of on the basics. So if we hit OK here, it will add in our lovely little email picture there. So look, we could do that with any sort of logo. This is where it comes in really handy. If you've got multiple subsidiaries and you want multiple forms, you can use advanced PDFs to add in to create different form templates, right, and have different logo forms sitting in there. Logo pictures sitting within your form. And now what we're going to do is come down here and actually add in the email. So we talked about our record browser here. What we're going to come down to is we want to put in our email, which isn't attached to the record. It's in our company information. And if we come down here, you can see email address, right? Our admin email. And we're going to add that in. Now, what you'll notice is it's putting in the field name, not the actual field data, which is just the way it puts it when you're utilizing the editor here. So now we've done a little bit of customization. You remember my number one tip was don't do too much until you have saved or previewed. This is probably at the far end extreme side of the amount of work you'd want to do before you preview, because we've added rows, we've added text, we've added a picture. If something goes wrong, I'm not going to be 100% sure where the error is sitting. So we're just going to check. Thankfully, as NetSuite, you can see it validates the code there. It thinks about it. It's checked and said that's all right. And here you can see our customization for those things. Here's our picture and the email address. Now, again, we've got a bit of an error here. We had put and seen within our editor that that was centered, and yet in the real environment or the real preview, that hasn't happened. So we're going to have to go into the coding side to look into that. So that's where we're going to head now. So buckle in, be prepared for a fun ride, because this is where all the magic starts happening, guys. We're going to tick on the source code button here, and what you're always going to get is a little warning that pops up. Basically, it's saying if you started using the source code, don't go back to the WYSIWYG editor, because it will muck up some of the formatting. Sometimes it can make glitches appear. It just doesn't like going backwards and forwards. Sometimes you can get away with it, but just as a general warning. But the reality is, if you're playing in the source code, and once you're comfortable playing in the source code, you're not going to want to go back. Now, that being said, when we first have a look, it can be very daunting. I mean, we've got all sorts of hashtags here. You can see, I mean, what does a double equal sign mean? What is this talking about? We've got macros. That's always a scary word. There's these opening and closing slash brackets and things. And it just looks really, we can see some things that we're familiar with. Those of you that use formulas and save searches will be going, yes, this is obviously a record field, item.description. That must be the description. But we're going to look and work through some of this to, like I say, take out some of the mystery around it. But before we go anywhere, when we first look at this, what you'll notice is that everything is really sort of hard aligned to the left. Now, when you're starting out with HTML coding, the best way to think about things is how they cascade into one another. And this visually does not show that cascading. So what we're going to do is use an online tool called PrettyDiff. What PrettyDiff does is it basically analyzes our code and then makes it visually shows that cascading tables into rows into cells, which you'll see in a second what I'm talking about. So this is PrettyDiff.com with their beautify function, which is going to do exactly what it says. So all I've done here is I have just select all and copied our code. You can see I've already been working on something here. I'm going to paste it in, click execute, and now if we compare the two, particularly if we come down the bottom of our code, you can see here is a table reference, and it's all sort of hard aligned. Here we can see that same table reference, but you can see what I mean about the cascading. Now this is talking about where things open, commands open and close. And as we look at some of the code, this is going to become a lot clearer, but it's just a really handy way to visually see what you're dealing with so that you can troubleshoot things faster. Again, right now that might not mean a lot, but hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll realize how important that is. Now, the one disclaimer I must give about Pretty Diff is sometimes it will muck up the if statements within a PDF that NetSuite has, where because it's taking out some of the spaces and you have to go in and just put the spaces manually back in. Now, I've already done that previously, so I'm just going to cut and paste this from a version that I know is all sorted. And we're going to delete and paste. And now, hopefully, when we preview, we aren't going to notice a difference at all in the form itself, but it's just the way that the code is presented. So see, we've still got this issue with the header logo and the header being smushed. We've still got this left aligned and bits and pieces. And here comes the really fun part of looking at the code. So just to give a bit of a background or a basic understanding of what we're looking at, there's two major types of coding that we're looking at here. The first is called HTML and the second is free marker. So HTML is referring to, I guess, the visual display or the visual commands and the language that's being used to generate the form. Free marker is referring to how it pulls the field data. So HTML is saying, hey, make this table, make it blue, put a title in here and make the title bold. Free marker is saying, all right, that title needs to be this field within NetSuite. So if you're talking to a developer who have their own special language with things, it's just important if they start referring to free marker, don't freak out. It's just talking about these sort of references, or if you're doing a formula within the form itself, it will be using free marker coding. And that's going to come in handy too as you start down this journey and you want to start Googling bits and pieces. That's going to be a key phrase that you want to use, free marker and HTML. What you will see too is within the code itself, there's three main forms. We've got the head and then we've got the body. Sorry, two. Within the head, we're going to have what we call our macro list, which is dealing with the header and the footer. So don't get head confused with the footer, with the header of the actual form. And then we've also got styling in there, and then the body is referring to the main part of the form itself. So you can see here, if we look, those of you that are very keen, here is a command saying this is going to be a PDF. And then we say, right, within this PDF, and this is how you want to sort of phrase things when you're working through this code. You want to start from the far left and work your way to the right, saying, within this command, we are doing this command. Within that command, we are doing this. So in this instance, we're making a PDF. Within that PDF, here is the instructions or the commands for the head of our PDF. And then this little first bit here that you can see, we've got all this crazy, you could pick out the word font there, maybe, and locale with some ifs. And you're going, what on earth is this talking about? The short answer is this is talking about use this language if the locale within NetSuite is set to, for example, if you're set within China as your locale, use Mandarin as the key thing for your form. If it is set within Thailand being your main locale, use Thai. So that's all this is. This isn't going to be much use to us today. It's just going to confuse things. So we're actually going to hit the delete button and get rid of that. If you are a multinational going across different countries and need different languages, that might be key and important to you. But for us today, we're just going to get rid of that because it's going to be a bit distracting. And once we've done that, we're going to do the golden rule of validating our code. And thankfully, I haven't deleted anything important. Again, nothing has changed on the form, but we've just got rid of all that stuff. So going back again, here we go. PDF, make a PDF. Here's the header command. So within the header, we're making a list of our different macros. The first macro that we want to look at is our header. Okay, so this is the header of the form. in this instance, if we come to the PDF, we're talking about this section here. So this is the instructions of what we're saying to NetSuite to look at. So the way that this works, again, you've got to think within tables, okay? That's the way HTML likes to do things. Think of putting a table into a Word document. So within our header, make a table is our first instruction. And then what you can see is we've got these different blue and red things. This is style data or information. Now, classes we will look at later, but basically what it means is you can set things to say, hey, I want, anytime I say class equals header, I want that particular table to have this formatting criteria. It might be a font, it might be a size, it might be coloring, it might be bordering, all that kind of information that is within sort of your standard Excel or Word format bar. That's the kind of information you can put here. Or you can do it at a one-on-one level by manually typing it here. One thing that I do always put whenever we're making tables or rows or things is a width instruction. Now you could do that by % or a pixel. I always recommend when you're starting out to do it at a % rate. It's just easier to work out. So this is saying make a table and make it 100% the width of the document that we're making. Then we've got this TR instruction. Now, if you're not familiar with what that means, it's meaning create a row. So again, if we go back through our way of thinking here, we're making a PDF. Within the head, we're looking at our macros. Within the header macro, which is what we've called it, make a table. And then within that table, in the first row, and then here's our next instruction, make a cell within that row. Okay. And then here again, we can see some formatting type information within this bracket. So where it falls within the greater than less than signs, we will call them. You know, if you are a developer watching this, please forgive me. I'm trying to keep this as basic as possible. If it fits within the greater than less than signs, it is an instruction that is restricted to, in this instance, that row. And that cell. Row span, or later you may see column span, that's just referring to merging. So where we came down earlier in our footer and we merged those two cells, in essence, we were doing a col span. We were saying there's two columns here, but we want this cell to merge across both of them. And then we're saying, right, so within this, in this instance, it's rows. So we've done like a vertical merge here. And then here you can see we're saying if there's an if formula, if we have a logo within the company information, then put it in, and here's some style information for that logo. And then next to, again, within this set, because we're still dealing within the same cell, so within the cell, put the picture, and then we want to put, here's our styling information, so we want to use the style that's assigned to name and address, and we'll look at where that's hiding later. We want to put the record company information dot company name, and then we want to put company information address. Now you might be going, where on earth do I find what fields to put? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. There's several different ways. Now, those of you who utilize formulas for save searches, it's the same sort of logic here. Those of you that aren't familiar, if we come to a record, within your preferences for your user, you can set up to see the internal ID. So if we click on any field here, we'll get the field help, and you can see here field ID, tran ID. So in this case, what we can see is record dot tran ID, and that's going to be very similar to what we were seeing in our record browser, our addition field when we weren't in the source code, when we were in the WYSIWYG editor. The other way that we can do it is utilizing the NetSuite records browser. So this is a great way to get familiar with what we can look at. So we're just going to come in here and say we're looking at a particular record, in this instance, the invoice record, and it's going to show us all the default. Now, it's not going to show you customized records that you have created, but it will show you all the standard records, what they're called as a standard, some help on them, and what the internal ID is. So we can come down here and see say we wanted to put the created from record. We would know that, hey, in the main table of the record table of invoice, if we were to type invoice.created from, we would get the data in this particular field. Now, it does also in the record browser here show you the linked tables. So here's the sublists. Okay, so if we want to refer to an item, we can put record.item. So that's telling it within the record, look at the item table and then take this internal ID. So if we want the amount from the invoice, so here's the item subtab. If we want to get this amount column, the record that we need to access is, oh, sorry, wrong tab there, is record.item dot, where was it, amount. Okay, so that's sort of hopefully taking away some of the mystery there for you too. Now you can also get lovely little add-on tools, like we've got one here within Chrome that shows you a list of all your field IDs. So this is Field Browser. What it does is it's a handy tool because it will show you the name, the record, and the amount. Now we're in a sandbox environment. This is going to take a wee while to load, so I'm just going to cancel that. But just to know that there are some neat tips and tricks there, feel free to reach out to us afterwards if you want to know more about those. But yeah, so coming back to our table, we can see here we've opened that cell, and here is the closing instruction. Okay, so this is all within one row still. So we are now saying open another cell. So this is cell number 2 within that row. So if you're thinking of a table, again, we've made a table, we've made one row, but actually we've said merge the first, in the first cell, merge the first 3 rows. So we've actually made 3 rows now. And then we've got 2 columns. In the first column, we've got our company logo, our name and address, and our address text all in there. And then in the second one, we've got the record at title. Now, this is another key thing to look at here. We're now not having a dot, we've got an at. So coming back to our invoice here, where we've got, coming back to our invoice number, you will see this is the title. This is the field record itself. So if you want to refer to the title, you do an at sign. So it would be record at tran ID versus record.tran ID. And the advantage with that is, say you wanted to rechange the PO number field and you wanted to label it as purchase order in full text. And you want that to be consistent across all your documents. Using the record at the reference number means that if you change this on the record form itself, it will also change in your PDF form. Okay. So here we go, we're working through that. We can see record at title and then record transaction ID in another row. And then we've got a third row here showing the transaction date. We've closed off that row and we've then closed off the table and we've closed off the macro. So immediately we know that all this highlighted stuff relates to our header. So once we've worked through that, coming back to our preview, the header information is therefore this logo that's gone skewed, this address and our name, the invoice and the transaction ID number. Now, again, to save time, rather than manually go through line by line and fix this, I've pre-prepared the code to tidy this up a little bit. So we're just going to cut and paste it in here. We're going to replace it. Oh, it didn't beautify that overly well, did it? So we'll just space that over. And now just going through it, we can see we'll work through our instructions again. We've got macro called header, open a table at 100% in the first row, merging the first 2 rows, don't have a border, and make the cell only 15% wide, then put our company logo. And here's the critical bit. I've put in some sizing instructions within the style for this particular instruction. So remember, we talked about the open and close greater than if then bracket. So this styling instruction, this width and height, is referring to this company logo, okay? Then we say close that cell, make another cell. Again, we've got some width instruction here, and you'll notice that within this row, all the 3 cells that we've created will add up to 100%, okay? So if you have it going greater than, or less than, it's going to confuse your code because it's saying, well, you've told the table to be 100%, but then you've given me conflicting information. You can see that we've put in some text align, some font size, some font weight. So that's all that styling, formatting stuff. We've put that in long style there. But again, we could put this all into a class like we talked about earlier and just say class equals something. I'll show you that in a second. Here's our title record, and then close that cell, make a new row, and then here's our transaction ID. Close that row, close the table. That's the end of our header. So now if we preview this, and of course that was the moment of truth that we hope it all works properly, you'll see our header has changed. Okay, so you can see that sizing information we've given it has worked, and that cell is 15% of the page. We've then got our next cell that we told it left align and put in our company name and our company address. And then we've got our third cell here where we've said right align, make it bold, say invoice, and put the transaction number. Okay, so that's what we've done there. And that is the header. And that's the basic sort of format of what you want to look at, or the tools that you're just repeating every single time you work through things. Okay, so there's the before where we were confusing it and it was all smudging and stuff. There's the after. Now, again, that's not necessarily anything super fancy that we've looked at, but it is just the basic tools that you rinse and repeat within the advanced PDF template. And then we hit our macro footer. Okay, now again, we can see here that we've got, here's our thank you for considering the environment line. And we can see that we've given this cell, which has this text, the instruction of text align center. But in this instance, it's actually clashing with the table style instruction. So again, I'm just going to come down and grab some code that I've already pre-tidied up. And we're going to chuck it in there for the sake of time. Now, remembering we want to go, right, where is our footer? You'll notice that when I click on macro, it automatically highlights the closing instruction. So this works within all sorts. So here's the open table instruction. If I just click on that, it automatically highlights within the editor the closing instruction. So I can see immediately that this information here is all our footer information. I'm going to come down and say paste. Again, it hasn't beautified that necessarily overly well, but that's because I'm cutting and pasting. And now if we're going to preview, we will see what that looks like. Remembering our original, it was skewed, it was looking a little bit smudgy. Here we come in, there's our lovely header as it was before. Here is our footer. You can see now we've actually also put a for concerns, we've put an extra space in here, and it's all centered, it's still in italics. So let's just have a look at the code, what we've done there for a moment. Oh, sorry, going a bit too fast for my own good here. Again, following the instructions, a macro instruction for, in this instance, our footer. So the table is going to be footer, it's going to be 1000%. Within our table, make a row. Within that row, we're going to make a cell, and we want it to go across all three columns. Remember, merge, col span means merge. And so this cell that is across the three columns is going to be 1000%. The text is going to be aligned, and here's the text. Now the EM just refers to italics, okay? So close that cell. Now, then make another row. Within this row, we're actually going to make it blank. That's what MBSP thinks. Think that is like a space bar, okay? So that's why when we come here, you can see there's just a blank row. There's nothing in it. Close that row, make a new row, and here we're going to make our first cell, which is going to be two merged cells that is going to take up 50%. For concerns, please contact us. And then we've got in the second cell that takes up the next 50%, right align text with the page number of total pages. That's the end of the cell. That's the end of the row. Move on to the next row, where we've then got our image code. And we've given some instructions on how we want that image. You can see there's our instructions for the height and the width again, so it doesn't blow up to a billion percent. We can see put space, 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 and then the email address, end of the row. And then we've got another in the second cell. is just another blank space, close the row, close the table, end of footer. And that's what we've got. All right, so that's visually what that code is looking like. So you can see here's that for concerns. If we come across, there's the end cell, it's right aligned. And again, you're just going to rinse and repeat this over and over and over as you start working through your own. The other thing I just quickly want to look at is this macro list of styles. So this is where we were talking earlier. You can set up different rules to say class equals. This is the instruction. And then you can put in all sorts of different information, font weight, font size. You can see background color, color of the text itself. And just pointing out another handy tool here is the icolorpalette.com. So this allows you to work through all sorts of colors. And it gives you the HTML code that you want. You can search what will red look like, go get information, and it's going to say, right, here is the code that you want for red. Again, you can use RGB codes if that's what you're more familiar with. You just got to mention that within the code here itself, and you'll be good to go. You'll be away flying. And then just to say, look, here we come, end of style, end of header, and then here's our body instruction. So this is where we get to the main list. Now, we're not going to have time to look at what is happening all in here today, but it's like I say, it's rinse and repeat of the same sort of disciplines, and it's understanding what you're reading. If you want to sit there and say, well, how do I do some further learning in some of this? Those of you with a NetSuite Learning Pass, there is some great videos in there. There's about 5 to 6 hours worth that cover everything from the basics of what we've looked at today through to much more advanced, like how to do some complicated scripting within an advanced PDF, stuff that I haven't even quite started delving into myself. There is always YouTube is a fantastic resource. There's plenty of stuff on there that is specific to NetSuite advanced PDFs. So you can sit there and type in bits and pieces like, hey, how do I advance PDF NetSuite make an item list table? And there's all sorts of guys doing lovely short little videos like what we've done through here today that will walk you through some of that. And finally, I cannot highly recommend enough the Oracle forums. If you're not involved in that sort of community, you definitely want to get amongst it. There's a lot of expertise hiding there with not only Oracle employees, but also sort of NetSuite champions just in the environment that want to share the tips and tricks that they've learned. So real life users like yourself that might be able to help you on with some of that. And finally, we're just going to quickly look at, we've made our PDF here, we're going to save it. How do we assign it to a record? So first of all, we've made it a template. You've got to assign that to a form, a transaction form itself. So you got to think we've made what the PDF is going to look like. Now we assign it to a form, and then that form gets assigned to a record. So in this instance, we would come down and we would find by type, we're going to find an invoice one. Again, we're going to just start, click on customize. Once it loads, for those of you who have in the past had what feels like a slow sandbox environment, this is just proof that we are all in the same boat together. And sometimes, unfortunately, sandboxes just are a little bit, take a little bit to churn through bits and pieces. But here we go. Here we go. Now, so what you want to do is, here, you want to make sure that your printing type is set to advanced, okay? And we come down here and we find our record webinar invoice template demo. So you can actually set different templates for printing versus email. We're just going to set them both the same. We're going to call it invoice form webinar 9th, 11th. Right, we're going to save this. Then we come into the record itself, and we're going to go edit. And hopefully, while we're opening this to edit, our form will save, and then we can just assign it. And then when we click the print button, it will magically, all the cogs in the background will turn correctly, and we are going to be able to print that invoice. So there we go, you can see that's saved. Fantastic, it's going to be listed down here. Here we go, invoice form, webinar 911. Now, any changes that we do make now to that advanced PDF code will automatically flow through to that form. Okay, so we come in here, custom form, which, look, it hasn't loaded, but here's one that we've previously done, webinar with the exact same one. If the invoice already has some transactions related to it, it will give you a warning if you're changing the form. In this instance, for today's purposes, we don't need to worry about that. But once that saves, we're going to hit print, and it is now going to populate our form with the real life data rather than the sort of standard text, fill-in text there. So here we go, the moment of truth. Can I have a drum roll, Andrew?
I can't simulate a drum roll, but I'm very excited, Josh.
Here we go, fantastic. It's printed and it's worked. So there you see, there's our lovely little footer that we worked on. Here's our header that we worked on, populated with our own data, the invoice and the invoice number. And in this instance, we've just kept the standard fairly default center that we haven't had time to work on today. And here is all the details from the form itself, just to prove it here. There's the 3 lines. We've got our quantities, our amounts, and we're done. So that is basically a basic run through of advanced PDFs. If you do want to investigate doing some of this with yourself and you're not feeling 100% confident, look, please feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to take you through as a support case or a support project, working on some of that with you. Or it's always something that we're happy to work on within Liberate IT.
Thanks,
Back
man.
to you, Andrew.
I never had a doubt that it was going to work, you know. Yeah. Fantastic. Look, thanks for that. Now, we haven't had any questions, and I'm mindful of the time where we've hit the top of the hour already.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth noting that, yeah, if you've got some questions about what you saw today, that's great. Hit up Josh. If you then take away this information, start working on it and hitting some further roadblocks around creating your own advanced PDFs, we're happy to do a more intermediate or / advanced PDFs webinar down the track as well. So happy to set that up. If you direct those to myself, we can set the agenda for that. So look, thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate your time. Let me just get my PowerPoint back up. I always skip the Q&A far too quickly, but I think we can take any questions after today. So Josh, thanks very much, man. I must admit, whenever I've gone into advanced PDFs in the past, as soon as I hit that code, I just went, yeah, no. So it's good to just get past that fear point and go, actually, this can start to make some sense. I think those external tools that you pointed the users to as well really helps make it a bit more logical, especially the structure of the HTML code, etc.
Absolutely.
So, thanks, man. And if you want those website links and you didn't pause it and make a note, let us know. Josh will be more than happy to send those to you as well.
We hope this video gave you the information you were after. If you have any further questions, get in touch with us using the links in the description.